Alright everyone, today I'm going through my list of 2019 games of the year. I've got a bunch of categories and a lot of really good games for you guys to check out. Just want you to bear in mind that I have not played every single game out there, and I also am not an enormous Nintendo fan, so please don't hold that against me. Bear that in mind going forth. It's just the games I played, the ones that I enjoyed, and the ones I actually own. So, because I'm a bit of a retro enthusiast as well, I've got a lot of retro themed awards as well. So, bear that in mind going forth. If you're not into that, maybe just skip over those. So, the first, I want to announce now like the categories for what are my game of the year, and then at the end of the video, I'll come through and I'll let you know what they actually are. So the 4 games I've got shortlisted for Game of the Year. Control. A Plague Tale: Innocence. Metro Exodus. Sorry about that. So, quickly recapping, my Game of the Year nominees are Resident Evil 2 Remake, Control, Plague Tale: Innocence, and Metro Exodus. Come back at the end of the video and I'll let you know why and give you a bit more of an intro, but those are the 4 shortlists on that. So my first category that I'm going to talk about is Best First Person Shooter. This is a bit of a hard one because, again, I don't play the Call of Duties, I don't play sort of Fortnite or Apex or anything like that online. So I just wanted to talk about sort of single player, narrative driven, interesting sort of games that I like to play. And if you've looked at this is probably only one game that it can be, so I'll just come out and say it. It's Metro Exodus. I'm going to pull this game out very gently. Here I've got the Xbox One Aurora edition. I do have the PS4 edition of this as well. And I actually started playing this first because it got dropped on Game Pass. My friend also wanted to play it, and that was the day Game Pass for PC got announced. So I told him to, race home at the end of work and quickly add it to his, he's already had the Microsoft Store on his PC, so he just went and downloaded that, and we both got to play through it. So I'll show you this because this is a pretty good collector's edition. I actually picked this collector's edition up second hand from a thrift store, and it was only about 30 Australian dollars, so well worth it. So I got the steelbook case. It's just disc, a giant map, and a bunch of DLC codes. No manual. Very strange. Big art book. Love that. Looks beautiful. There's a steel box, and then a slip cover. Highly recommended for anyone who is a fan of the Metro series and people who just love first-person shooters in general. Only criticism of it is that there's a morality system, so there are points at which you cannot shoot certain NPCs, and certain human enemies you've got to knock them unconscious and not kill them, and that is apparently in the other games, and I was not the hugest fan of it, because sometimes I just want to go through and murder everyone, and technically you can, but you can't get the true ending to the game that way. You have to do all the side quests, and you have to not kill any humans at all. So that's a bit of a rough one. So on to the next category. I'm going to try and keep it a bit faster than my last video, which just rambled forever, is third-person shooter. So third-person shooter, basically the nominations on that were really only going to be Resident Evil 2 and Control. And in this case, I gave it to Control just because I thought that it had more mechanics than just shooting. You've got superpowers essentially, and I thought that was You really added a bit of depth to the game. And I love the spooky sort of storytelling that was in this, and it really, really messed with my head a little to see that. Like, you'd be thinking about it throughout the day at work, or you'd be, sort of dreaming of it. Resident Evil 2, really fantastic. Like, just very true to the original, fixed all the problems that it had with it, added the Resident Evil 4 shooting, modern stick controls, which just make this thing so much more playable. Fantastic game. But I had to give the award to Control just because it is a new IP, and it was just, I had so much fun with that. It was a really good one. Next category, is Best Racing Game. Now, I've had to give, this one was a split decision essentially. I had to share it amongst two games because I felt that these ones represent, they're so much on the opposite end of the spectrum. This one is sort of the return of a classic franchise, but it's hyper realistic and modern. It's, this is the same group of developers that did the Burnout series, Three Fields Entertainment. They've come back. They've made a spiritual successor to it. They've got crash mode included. So yeah, Dangerous Driving takes it for sort of realistic racing game, or more realistic in terms of its visual aesthetics, like how it looks. Sorry guys, my camera won't zoom any more than that. And now we've got Horizon Chase Turbo. Again, this is one that sort of came out in Brazil a few years ago. This finally got, I played it on PlayStation Plus because it was free for the month. Funny story related to this is when I was like, I don't know if I don't want to just keep playing it digital only on PS Plus. I want to get a physical copy. So I got the American one off PlayAsia, and my save file was not compatible with my PAL version. A lot of games that I've seen this generation, especially on the Xbox, will allow you to use the disc from any region, and it'll have the one save file. PlayStation 4 seems to be keeping it still region locked, so be aware of that. You can play the American version, and if you just buy that one day one and play through the whole thing, no problem, that save file will be there. Its only problem is if you try to transfer from the PS Plus version, get the European version with the PEGI label on it. It's essentially the UK release. But yeah, like I said, this is a throwback to 80s and 90s arcade races, and it's very cartoony and actiony sort of, so realistic racing game. What do you call it? Cartoony racing, I guess you'd say. More of a retro throwback thing. Now, on to the next one. I had Best Indie Game. So, again, I haven't played every independent game that's come out this year, and I can only talk about the ones that I've played and that I enjoyed. So, that this year goes to Shakedown Hawaii. I actually have the PS4 version as well in the other room, but I figured, 2 versions is enough. I ended up getting the Switch Collector's Edition because the regular edition was sold out, and this was about a third more expensive. And as far as collector's editions go, I would say it's probably not the best value for money, only because there's not a lot in it. There's a cardboard slipcover, there's the game, and then there's a tiny little plastic statue. Really not worth it for a third of the extra price. There should have been a manual, like an art book or a CD, or a little bit more in there to give you bang for the buck. So I probably would steer clear of this version. This is probably the last physical Vita game I'll get, because a lot of the stuff that comes out just doesn't interest me. I'm not going to buy Vita games for the sake of getting them, but I will buy ones that I think are great. And this is a game I finished on every platform. Like, I went through a playthrough on the Switch, I went through a playthrough on the Vita, on the PS4. I've got the PC version now because they just had an Epic Store sale. I'd rather not buy it on Epic, but it was cheap enough, so fuck it. So yeah, highly recommended for an indie game. This is, if you've ever played the first 2 Grand Theft Autos, top-down 2D games, same as that, except this is a far, far better story. And if you've played Retro City Rampage, it's that same style of game as well. So yeah, highly recommended that you get that game if you get a chance. Next one, this is a good one. So I've added, this is another sort of retro-y style category. It's best digital game that got released a few years ago that got a physical release this year. And that one goes to Hellblade Senua's Sacrifice. You have this physical copy for the PS4 as well, and I have beaten the PS4 version. I've still got to knock out the last little bit on this. I like getting the two versions because there's sometimes differences on a technical level. Like this one will obviously give you, you know, your 4K and that, but I found the controller responses were a little bit quicker on the PS4. So I'd love for Digital Foundry to look at that and see if there is actual latency or if it's just I was having a bad day. Both things are equally possible, but I think now that Xbox Series X has been announced and they showed the trailer for the sequel to this, I think this is fairly widely known now. People are going to know what it's about. Third-person action game, really good fun. Glad it got physical because it really deserved it. So I'm very, very happy at that. Next category is best Kickstarter game. Now, we've had a lot of Kickstarter games the last few years. Many of them have been shit. Many of them have been just meh, like they're okay, but they're not fantastic. I think this year we're really lucky. We got, I would argue, 2 major releases that are actually really, really good. And those are Bloodstained Ritual of the Night by Koji Igarashi, and which is a spiritual successor to Castlevania. I can't even remember. I've got it on. I downloaded the PS1 version for the PS3 a while ago. Symphony of the Night. That's right. That's the one. And we got Shenmue 3 from Yu Suzuki. I think the best part about these 2 games coming out is that Koji Igarashi and Yu Suzuki can start making games again in the genres they're sort of well known for. And we can just get more good games because these 2, very good games. The only thing that I think hurts Shenmue 3 is that it's a very early open world game that ended up being very different from what open world games ended up being. Open world ended up being stuff like Horizon Zero Dawn or like Days Gone or, you know, like Grand Theft Auto, those sort of things. They went in a different direction, whereas this is sort of its own thing. Slower paced, more detailed world, still really good. And I still think like this thing's just not going to sell that great because it is so niche. But I really think if you're looking for something different, if you sort of look at your collection one day and like, you know, I'm bored, I don't want to play any of this stuff, I want something different, it's definitely worth doing. But there is simplified combat in this game. There's a lot of stuff that has been sort of toned down for the newbies, but I love the changes to the fighting system because it gives you the combos on the screen when you have to execute them and you have to practice them. So that's looking really, really good. I'd also say to people who are saying this is like a failure, well, it's not really a failure, only because they never anticipated to sell 1 billion copies, you know. This is not going to be a God of War or, you know, Gears of War or anything like that. It's, yeah. But I had to give the award for this one in the end to Bloodstained, only because I never really was able to get into any of the Castlevanias. I found a lot of them a bit too grindy, a little bit too boring. I really felt like they needed modernising in order for me to be able to enjoy them, and that's not the fault of the games. That's more me. I couldn't get into them because I needed a bit more, you know, modernisation out of them. Bloodstained gave me that. Very modern, very, you know, if you played the Castlevania or the Metroids, this is right up that alley. I've played through this already once. I'm playing through it again, second time, just because I had so much fun with it. I love the RPG mechanics of leveling up, upgrading weapons and armor and all that stuff. Going through and taking out certain bosses to get certain rewards. You know, really, yeah, best Kickstarter game of the year by far. Highly recommended. People have said the PS4 version is probably better. I found that I watched the Digital Foundry review, and my opinion was this one was the way to go for my setup, because I have a 4K monitor with FreeSync and an Xbox One X, which meant I can play this whole thing in 4K. And even though there's only one level, which is the tower, where this thing becomes it drops into the mid 40 FPS range, but because I've got FreeSync on here, there's no screen tearing, so you will not really notice the drops in frame rate, simply because at the point where you're at this level, all you're doing is running up a large spiral staircase. You're not actually like deep in the middle of intense combat with 100 enemies, so the frame drops are totally survivable now that the screen tearing's been eliminated. And yeah, highly recommend to go play this version. The patches have come out, and I think they've fixed a lot of problems, but there's still... I'm finding a few glitches in this game still that need to be fixed. So I look forward to that. I have to say, Shenmue 3, I have not experienced as many glitches as what I did with Bloodstain. So as much as I think this is great, this one is very beautiful and very polished as well. So definitely go jump on this if you haven't done so already. Both games are absolutely worth playing. Where are we now? What's the next one? Best remakes. Best remakes is a tough one that I had to sort of and ah about a little bit. But to no one's surprise, Resident Evil 2, great remake. Next ones I have was this. Oh, okay, good. There we go. Medieval for the PS4. Something you might not know about this is if you can finish the game, you actually unlock the ability to play the original PS1 version. So that really impressed me. Oh, excuse me. I'm playing this in 4K. It was really beautiful. Looks amazing. The other one I got in here is Ghostbusters, the video game remastered. Had this for the PS3 and the 360. Used the PS3 version just for the online component, and played the 360 version because it had a lot less bugs in it. I ended up getting this one only because it had 4K. And the funny story behind this is they'd actually lost a bunch of the assets for this, like the original game code. And someone somehow just found it, like maybe in an office drawer or a cupboard somewhere, and that allowed this remaster to get made. This is another one that on PC ended up going to the Epic store, so maybe you have to wait a year or two before you can play it, or maybe they'll keep it on Epic forever, which is a little disappointing. But yeah, good one to play. This is another one where I would have liked to have chucked it to Resident Evil 2, but I had to look at what was I playing and what was I having the most fun with. And to be honest, I played more of Ghostbusters than these other two games combined. I've been through this like 3 or 4 times. I really loved all the gameplay and the mechanics and the dialogue. And it was just so nice to see, Spengler back in action, because sadly the actor, I think Harold Ramis is his name, he's no longer with us. So unlikely we'll get him in this new movie that's coming out, and it's really disappointing. But yeah, I highly recommend this, not to be missed. Please go out and play that. It was an absolute dream to enjoy. Best console exclusives. Okay, this is a good one. I'm really happy about this one as well. I'm sorry, I have to go load up the artwork, because I ended up getting this year 3 months of Game Pass Ultimate for like 3 months or something, and I wanted to go through and play some games I hadn't played before. So the first one that I played on Xbox was Gears 5. Went through the whole campaign, really enjoyed it. Again, my real criticism with third-person shooters nowadays is that the amount of time I spend pushing the reload button is insane, and the reload animations take so long. This game gives you the option to play a little quick time game to try and load your gun a bit faster. Now, I'm not quite good enough to beat that mini game every time, but the times you do get it, it can really save your bacon. So Gears 5 is my recommendation for best Xbox console exclusive. The Switch one becomes a little bit harder because I have not bought the vast majority of Switch games that came out this year that were super popular. So no Fire Emblem, no Pokemon, no Astral Chain and all that. And I'm just going to say, because I haven't played them, I can't really pass judgment on them. They could be the greatest games in the world. They could be average games. I simply don't know. And I can't comment on them except to say I haven't played them. But Luigi's Mansion 3 is one that I had played on the GameCube years ago, and I thought it was really fun. So I went and picked up number 3, and I still think, for the few Switch games that I bought, this is, I think, the best console exclusive this year. Bit hard because like I said, I haven't played Astral Chain, haven't played Fire Emblem, played a bunch of other stuff, so they could turn out to be better later on. But these are just the best games that I have actually played. So please don't hate on me in the comments too much. And okay, so console exclusive for the PlayStation that came out this year. There really were only 2 that came out that I thought worthy of it, is Judgment and Days Gone. I think Judgment is the better game, but I had to sort of strike Judgment off the list on a technicality, which is that it is a third-party game. It's not a first-party exclusive, and this is absolutely going to go to PC because all the other RGG studio games, this studio, all their games have dropped on PC, or at least all of the modern remakes and that. So I'm probably going to go that way. But PS4 versions are the only way to get physical copies, so I always try to jump on the PS4 version. So I had to sort of exclude it for that, which means it goes to Days Gone. I love Adam Koralick's playthrough of this, only because what he said is essentially true. This is a rip-off of a Far Cry game, of a Ubisoft open world game. And, I still found it more enjoyable than he did because I enjoy the hunting mechanics. And I actually have a motorcycle license. I've ridden them around, and I found the motorcycle riding to be a little bit fun in this. I really enjoyed it. There is no fast travel in it, but the people who've criticised that may or may not be motorcycle enthusiasts, as I am. So I enjoy the riding around on the bike because it is peaceful and relaxing, and it allows you to sort of build a map of the region in your head. When you come to intersections, like where one road meets another, you know mentally which way you have to turn to get to what area. I think that is an element of this game that perhaps a lot of people didn't understand. You really got to be a motorcycle fan, I think, to enjoy the navigation through this, because it doesn't have fast travel. Having to regas your bike is not a huge amount of fun, and the sheer amount of bugs and glitches and patches that were needed for it were not great. But I do like what this represents for Sony going forward, that some of their smaller studios can jump on Unreal Engine 4 and make games, because this is probably the first Sony first-party game that's an Unreal Engine 4 game. I'm pretty sure it is, at any rate. That's so odd. Normally they have to have Unreal Engine written on the box or something. Yeah, but at any rate, that's your best PlayStation exclusive game from a first-party studio. On to the next category. Gotta scroll down my little thing here. Okay, so best third-party exclusive. I've touched on it. So best third-party game that is exclusive to one console or one platform at the moment is Judgment. Really great Japanese. It's Yakuza meets Phoenix Wright. I really found the drone stuff to be very fun, but I found a lot of the tailing suspects thing to be incredibly tedious. So I think it suffers a little bit for that. I can safely say the combat in this is just as good as Yakuza 6 and Yakuza Kiwami 2, because it's the Dragon Engine game. This is, I think, the third Dragon Engine game, and it's really good. The only thing is this is absolutely going to PC. There's no two ways about it. And yeah, so it is the best third-party exclusive, I think, this year. At least the one that I've certainly had the most fun with. I made the mistake, if I'm up to the end game and I did not upgrade myself sufficiently, so now I have to go back grind, fight a ton of street battles just to be able to unlock the upgrades I need to beat the final bosses, or the final boss rush, or whatever you want to call it. So yeah, a bit disappointed in that. So I didn't know what category to put the next game in, so I just put it as best military game. Because I don't know that I'd call it a flight sim. It's a mixture of simulator and arcade combat. But best military themed game that I actually played and that I actually own would be Ace Combat 7 Skies Unknown. I really hate Bandai Namco because they have this huge disclaimer license agreement thing that comes up at the start of every game, and it's on this one, and I really despise that bit. But the flying in this game, the shooting, the missions is incredible. I haven't tried the VR mode yet, but I'm absolutely going to do that sometime next year. I waited a whole year, almost 11 months before I went and picked this thing up, just because I didn't want to pay $100 for it. I didn't think it was going to be worth it. I ended up paying about 45 Australian dollars for it, and I think at that price at least, it's very, very worth it, and I had good fun with it. It's a bit of a weird category to put it in. I don't know if you would call it a flying game or... I left it as best military theme game, but again, bear in mind I don't play Call of Duty, so I can't really do that. Now we're on to best VR game, and that really only came down to Ace Combat and Blood and Truth for me. But because I haven't played the VR on Ace Combat, I threw it to Blood and Truth because I really enjoy the performances of this actor. Can't remember his name. He was in a TV show that I like watching, Limitless. He played one of the bad guys there. And this story is just, if you ever watch British gangster films, it's that, and it's really, really good. Had a bunch of patches, and this one's had a bunch of patches and stuff to get it, working a lot better. The only thing I criticize about this is it's very hard to play with the controller. You really need the Move controller so you can move each hand independently. And if you're playing at a desk setup like I am, a lot of the times you have to move your hand sort of down in this direction, and I get my hand stuck on the table, and I have to sort of completely readjust my headset to do it. So it can be tedious to play. I don't have a big flat screen that I can set it up in front of and have a lot of free space in front of me. So hopefully at the new house that I get next year, I can set this up and play that in a bit more of a free space. But still, best VR game of the year. So I'm really glad for that. Now, I'm on to best retro game. So this is a bit of a hard thing I've got to explain, but basically there are independent video game developers who make games in 2019 and into 2020 for old video game systems. And you can buy cartridges of these. In the case of the Dreamcast or the PS1, you can buy CDs for them and pop them in your console and they'll play. So this year, only one that stood out to me was Xenocrisis. I backed this one on Kickstarter to get the Dreamcast version. That one hasn't shown up yet, but when I went to their Bitmap Bureau's website, I found out that they would let you buy the Mega Drive ROM on its own for £15 and put it onto your EverDrive, and you can play it on your console. I've got it here on a modded American Genesis Model 2, playing with HD Retrovision cables onto a Sony Trinitron. This thing was a great pickup to get because I went to a rich person's house. They barely used it. It's great condition. Fantastic game. I'm really interested to try the PS4 and the Switch version to see if it gives you twin stick shooting options, because I think that would make that game a lot better. So, best retro game translations. Now that's an interesting one that I don't really have any props for, sorry. But basically what happens is a lot of older game systems have games that only come out in one region. Usually it's Japan, and they want to bring them out to the Western world. And for some reason they didn't. And decades later, someone goes along and translates them and releases a patch for them. So you can buy a copy from Japan, rip the disc, patch it, and then burn a copy so that you can play it yourself. Now this year we're really spoiled for Sega Saturn stuff. We got Link Will Live a Story, which is supposed to be a spiritual successor to Crusader of Senti. We got Grandia, which was a game that was on the PS1, an RPG, an action RPG, I think, and they basically ripped the English audio from the PlayStation version and patched it into the Japanese Saturn version, because Grandia originally came out on the Saturn first, and I think it was built for that system, so the graphics are a little bit nicer on it, and it sort of is the game that, for me, proves that the Saturn can do 3D very well, but from what I understand, it's a nightmare to program for because it's all in assembly code, and it wouldn't allow you to program in like C or C+, like, you know, later consoles would, and even PlayStation let you do it in C. So the 3 games that we had come out, we had Grandia come out, we had Link Will Live a Story, and the third one, which has just only come out in the last, I think, few weeks, or in the last week actually, which is our winner for this year, is Sakura Wars. It's a top-down Final Fantasy Tactics style game, which also has visual novel elements and dating sim elements. But I've been told the dating sim elements are totally optional, so you could go through the whole game and essentially date no one. So if that sort of scares you off, I really wouldn't worry about it. You can probably just not do the dating thing and just, you know, socialise with people without hooking up with them. So yeah, people buy a Saturn, get it mod chipped or get a pseudo Saturn in it, and buy those games from Japan. They're not expensive. I think I paid like $5, $10, $20 for these games and ripped them and patched them, and they ran really well. So I'm going to go on to the next category, which is another really weird one, because it's sort of 2 categories in one. It is best older games that I only just discovered this year, and these 2 games are a second category of digital only games that I want physical releases for. This plays into the retro thing a bit more. But the 2 that I played, because I had Game Pass, I just went scrolling through stuff on the list, and I played Snake Pass, and it's fantastic. Absolutely reminds me of a PlayStation or N64 era 3D platformer, but it has a totally unique control system. I played this thing I think I clocked it on Switch, I clocked it on Xbox One. The Xbox One version is so much superior. It plays in 4K. It looks like a dream. It looks like how you wish cartoons looked when you were a kid. I want a physical release for this on the Xbox. It did get one for the Switch, but the Switch is literally the worst version. Give me an Xbox One version or a PS4 version, or, you know, a next-gen port of it. I really want that as a physical release, and I think it was just fantastic. So the next one was a game that dropped on Switch this year, but came out, I think, a few years ago. Shadow Blade Reload. If you like Ninja Gaiden, it's essentially that. It's a 2D platformer with ninja combat. Yeah, I was blown away by this because I saw this for pretty cheap on the eShop, and I thought, I'll grab it. I really don't like Ninja Gaiden style games because they're very hard and I suck at them. But I did go through and complete this whole game in about 2 or 3 days because I could not put it down. It was highly addictive. I want more people to play this, and I want to get a physical copy. Because it's a 2D game, it runs totally fine on Switch. I've got a PC version as well. Again, that ran on my ancient GT 730, and I was still able to get 2K out of it. The frame rate was awful, but it ran great frame rate on that card in 1080p. So, great game. Please give me a Switch port of this. I think because it runs well on the Switch and there's no like performance downgrades, I think if you release on Switch, you'll get a few extra sales out of it because, you know, you can sell it in Asia, and there's a bit of a more passionate fan base, I feel, for Nintendo this generation. So yeah, and we're on to the next category, which is the same 2 candidates. Best 2D platformer that I played was Shadow Blade Reload, even though it's an older game. A lot of the 2D stuff that came out this year didn't really grab me. I didn't really enjoy a lot of it. And best 3D platformer was Snake Pass. I must have some more categories here. That I probably just haven't written them down. So I wanted to... I forgot one, which was the best... there are two more categories I have here. So I had done the platform exclusive games, and I left out PS Vita game, which is Shakedown Hawaii, because it's the only PS Vita game I bought this year. Fantastic version of the game. If you're into Sony portables, like I said, it's probably the last Vita game I'll ever buy, but really, really great game to get. I feel like more people would choose to buy the Switch version this late in the, now the Vita's officially dead in the West. But it was like the last Western release I actually wanted to buy, and I was able to get it. I missed out on the initial release on VBlank's website, but I was able to get it through, I think, Video Games Plus in Canada. Even though they say they're in Canada, but all their stuff to me ships out of the Netherlands. So, if anyone knows why that happens, please let me know, because I'm deeply curious about that. The other one, which is again more retro themed one that I wanted to talk about, was unfortunately this year spelled the end of the Xbox backwards compatibility program. So I wanted to go through and just mention the original Xbox and 360 game that I thought were my favourite releases of this year. So we got a lot of stuff for the original Xbox, like Splinter Cell and Sphinx Curse of the Mummy, which I thought was probably the worst release on there because it's not a fun game, and I don't know why a lot of people enjoyed the Switch re-release and that. But original Xbox game for me that came out this year was Indiana Jones and the Emperor's Tomb. This is a game I'd had sitting in the shelf for years and years. Bought it for like $3 when they were clearancing out OG Xbox stuff from like EB Games and Harvey Norman and places like that. So I had picked it up then, played a little bit of it, wasn't really enjoying it. Went back and played a lot more. Haven't finished it yet. Went back and played a lot more on Xbox One X. Very, very good. Highly recommend it. Now, this was a game I picked up on 360 years ago thinking, there is no way they don't bring this out on backwards compatibility. There's just no way they're not going to do it. So I avoided the PS3 version, even though it was a lot cheaper, and I'm like, I'll sit on this. I'm sure it's going to come out. It ended up coming out. Unfortunately, this game is obviously a cheap, post-apocalyptic sort of look at like the King Wukong story, because that's essentially who this guy's supposed to be. He's got that headband on his head, which forces him to be this girl's slave. She gives him an order, he has to do it. But they have to travel across the country to get themselves safe. It has that Horizon Zero Dawn-esque, post-apocalyptic but very green and beautiful sort of world thing. Lots of platforming, lots of shooting. Really good game, but yeah, this is just flat out a beat for beat of the Sun Wukong story, so yeah. Still the best 360 release that I played. I clocked this game start to finish. So yeah, fantastic game for people to play on that platform. Now coming up, it's the final event. Now we've got to announce Game of the Year, and I'll run through the candidates again. It's Metro Exodus. I haven't really been able to talk about this game too much, and the truth is, absolutely greatest first-person shooter of the year. There is no substitute for it. Everything else is not as good. It's brilliant for first-person shooting, the only one I want to play. And yeah, fantastic one. Resident Evil 2. It's a perfect remake that improves on the original, adds new stuff. I love the fourth survivor mode. It's so good, but the thing that hurts this is that it's a release of an old game. Like anyone who's my age and sort of their mid-30s has played this on the PS1 or the Dreamcast or the PC or the GameCube. We've been there, we've done that, we've played it. It is an improvement, but we've all played it before. So that really, really hurts it. The next game up is A Plague Tale Innocence. Story-driven, third person. Yeah, I don't want to go into this too much, but basically there's a lot of rats floating around in this game, and you have to use sort of fire mechanics to try and get the rats out of the way so you can make it through to whatever the next obstacle is. You're playing as Amisha here, and this is her little brother Hugo, and he's got power to telepathically control rats, and some psycho Catholic priest is trying to get control of his powers, but psycho Catholic priest chasing after a small boy. I feel like there's a little bit of tongue-in-cheek in there, and rightfully so. I think you should definitely give them a little bit more shit about that sort of behaviour. And the fourth one I had to bring out was Control. I want to talk first about Plague Tale, because the thing that hurts this is really just that, sort of the same thing that hurts this. This is a remake of a game everyone's played, and that hurts this. This is such a new sort of genre of like managing a herd of rats everywhere. I don't even know what you would call that, like managing an environment, managing a natural hazard. It's so new as a concept that it suffers from Shenmue syndrome, that I don't know how many people would have jumped on that and enjoyed managing, a spinning herd of rats. Hard to really describe it that way. And the last game in here, and it's my game of the year, I'm going to say that now, is Control. It's a good game. It's a new IP. Apparently, the main reason people don't like this, and I'm surprised that that's a thing, is that people say it's like Advent Rising. Now, if you're not a YouTube reviewer, you're going to say one thing. What the fuck is Advent Rising? I've never heard of that. I've never played that. I don't know what that is. Turns out it's an original Xbox game. One that I do not have, had never heard of back in the day, and have never seen in person. So, if you played Advent Rising and then you go to play this, you're not going to be shocked by new mechanics because you've essentially played them before. And I think that is something that hurts this game for other people. However, because I didn't play that Advent Rising game, and here's a photo of the box art if you ever want to go track it down. If you've played this game, then you might not feel the impact from this game. Because I never played that game, this game stood out all the more to me. I like the fact that the story requires you to read the audio tapes, track down the written text and that. I find in games where you have to gather and craft from loot and things like that, I'm just a pack rat. I will run around, I'll search every drawer, every box, find everything. It's a bit of Shenmue syndrome if you've ever played that. You can look through every drawer and every cupboard and everything you could possibly imagine to find every little thing. So in later games, I end up doing just that. I look through everything, I find everything, I ransack everything. And I really enjoyed that. And the VHS tapes you find that are like educational tapes for little kids to explain to them why their parents have been sucked into like an otherworldly portal is really disturbing, because you could imagine a very sinister government agency doing something like that to try and explain it to kids. I personally think that they would just tell kids to shut up and say, oh, they just passed away, so sorry. I think they would just lie to them in real life. But yeah, it had such an emotional impact on me, and I really think this game suffers only from, you either get it or you don't. You either love it or you don't. It's very polarizing. That's the biggest negative I can say about this game. It's too polarizing. It really is one where you sort of have to fill in the blanks yourself. It's a bit like if you ever read a novel and you're imagining what the world looks like in your head. Your brain has to go through that extra step, that extra effort to visualize something. And I think with this, my brain was sort of filling in the world as I learned new stuff, and I was sort of making a map of where to go in my head, and I found the mental engagement from that to be very stimulating, a lot like reading a book, and I no reviewers ever mentioned that. And I think if you enjoy reading books and building a picture of the world in your head from all the little, audio logs and videotapes and documents that you capture around, if you enjoy that, it's really good. And I loved going through and unlocking all the powers. The gun is okay in this thing. It's sort of essential, but I didn't really enjoy the upgrades for it because they were too expensive. Like, it cost a lot of material to get them, and it was very difficult. Some of the rare stuff only comes from boss battles. So you're only going to be able to upgrade your gun with 2 options. I ultimately ended up changing my gun just to be the shotgun, the short range, absolute cannonball that would just knock over 6 enemies at once. And I also stuck with the standard shot, which is just the pistol rounds or whatever, because it gave me greater accuracy over distance. If you've got those guys with the sort of bags over their head that are strapped to chairs and they're flying through the sky throwing shit at you, you need to be able to snipe those guys. You've got to sort of hide behind the posts, pop out, cap them a few times in the head, hide back behind the post, let them throw some shit at you, pop back out again. Just do that over and over again, you'll get them dead. I love the ground slam attack in this. I love the levitation and being able to sort of quickly move through an area. You do have fast travel in this, and I do use it when I need to jump from like one side of the map to another. But if I'm traveling from one area to the next area over, I'm usually quite happy to traverse that on foot or through levitation or through fast. You've got sort of a boost mode where you'll sort of do the Superman. If you watch the Man of Steel and you see how the guys sort of move in that, they'll move from one place to another really quick just by dashing really fast. That's what they can do with this. They can do a dash, sort of run on the ground, or a dash through the sky. Really enjoyed this one. Gosh, it just suffers so much from being polarizing, and I really depresses me. But I'm really happy to find that ordinary gamers are really taking to this. I've got a mate at work who just picked this up for his PS4, and he's having a blast playing through it. Because, again, same thing. He never played Advent Rising. He'd never heard of Advent Rising, same as me. So all the mechanics are new, and he's enjoying the third-person shooting. And just like me, he just wants his gun to be as destructive as possible. So he's probably just going to upgrade the shotgun feature like I did, and maybe just the standard gun mode for sniping. If there is ever a sequel, make the gun upgrades cheaper and give us like 10 different options. And make every one of them mandatory in some situations. Like, this gun should have had like a flamethrower option. It should have had, a grenade launcher option. It should have had, I would have loved if this thing had like a grappling hook thing, and you've got to use it to like attach to the roof and then sort of swing from one area to another. I think that adds a whole nother element of 3D platforming to this. I just felt like the gun was really underused in this, and I would love to see that improve for a sequel. There's some free DLC out now, the expeditions for this. I'm not sure I'm interested in that, because it's just go into a certain area, have combat, come out, grab a lot of loot. It's a looter shooter, it's the Fortnite add-on for Control. I probably won't be getting that. I will likely get all the story DLC and play that, because the story's not finished. The end of this game, it feels like you're 3/4 of the way through the game, because you probably are. But I'm really excited to see this on the next gen platforms. I want them to patch in ray tracing for that. I want them to, patch in 4K, because this one and Plague Tale, they both run in 1440p. I think they could both use a boost and an upgrade to full 4K. Full 60 frames a second. This one suffers a lot from slowdown because it is a late gen title. It's not being built for the Xbox One and the PS4. It's being built for the PS5 and the Series X. It's being built for next gen hardware. So the patches are out that get this thing as playable as it's ever going to be, but be aware it's a next gen game that's just been allowed to come out on last gen tech. That's a big improvement to that. But I want you to sort of look at all of these games that I got in their entirety because if you're like, I've been away, or I didn't have a lot of money this year, and I didn't get a chance to go out and like buy all the games, because even this year I had to sort of cut back on buying games because, I was paying to have my house built. So this is actually, a lot of this stuff, I bought most of this second hand. The only stuff or if I did buy it new, I bought it off like Amazon, which is, $65 on day one, minus a $5 discount for being a Prime member. So you're down to like $63 or something for a day one release. So this one I pre-ordered years and years ago, so I didn't spend any money on it this year. This one was discounted to $28. This one I did pay the full $100 day one. I'm a massive RGG Studios fan. This one I only paid about $50 for, and I had to get that from Gamesman to get it in from the UK. Big warning about dangerous driving. It's a JB Hi-Fi exclusive. Now, if you're in Australia, please go out and buy this now, because the only other JB Hi-Fi exclusive that I came across was a game on the Wii, and it was Sin and Punishment 2. Successor of the Stars, or Successor of the Skies, is it? It's one of those two. And it's in the Australian version with the OFLC classification, is impossible to find now. It is physically impossible. I spoke to the guys at EB Games. They said, we've only had one copy be traded in the last 15 years. It was that rare. So go get, if you want a physical copy of Dangerous Driving, if you love the Burnout series, it's on Xbox as well. Go get it from JB Hi-Fi now before they sell out, because I don't think they're going to order another print run. And I think this is a game that, if you're a Burnout fan, is a must play. This is also a game I wanted to warn you. I bought this for Xbox One originally. I had a lot of crashes, like a hell, and I don't mean car crashes. That's a good kind of crash in this game. I had a lot of game crashes, a lot of bugs and glitches. I lost my save file a couple of times. This thing really drove me up the wall, and I had to just switch to the PS4 version. Even though it probably runs at a lower resolution or frame rate, this one does not crash. The other one, the Xbox One, crashed all the time with that game. They might have patched it now, so bear that in mind, but really be aware of that one. Get it on PS4, probably avoid Xbox unless you can help it. Medieval was another game, got that cheap, Amazon discount. Ace Combat, waited 11 months to buy it and paid only like $50 for it. This one, waited a few months for it, still ended up paying full price because not a lot of people are carrying VR. Really only JB Hi-Fi is doing a whole VR section. This one, paid the full price for it. Whatever, I don't even remember what they were charging for it. But, it was a limited edition thing, had to jump on it now, sort of limited run game style. Don't really like that, generally speaking, but I had to. Again, this was the Amazon discount. This one here, Tetris 99. I actually might have missed a category on this. This is best multiplayer game. Okay, again, because I don't play Call of Duty, because I don't play Fortnite or Apex. This gets the award for single player game. It came with 12 months of free Nintendo Switch Online. I got 12 months for free because I was on, an Amazon Prime member and therefore a Twitch Prime member. I want people to consider getting this physical copy because if you have just the Nintendo Switch Online version, that's only the online mode. That's all you get. You don't get any of the single player options. The cartridge has the single player options, but you also need the Nintendo Switch Online to use the multiplayer. So consider your options with this if you want to save a bit of money and you're only ever going to use the... So if you're only going to use the multiplayer, just get the digital. If you want to use the single player stuff, which you really should, because it's Tetris, it's by definition originally a single player game, you should get the physical copy if you want to do single player. Again, if you want to get 360 and original Xbox stuff for backwards compatibility, these games are totally fucking worthless. This thing was $5. This thing was probably $3 years and years and years ago when I finally got it. This Aurora Metro Edition was $30 from a Cash Converters, and it's got all the gear in it. The DLC codes have been used. First thing I tried, so I missed out on that. I'll probably go get the DLC for it. I just think it's that good anyway. Probably going to get the DLC for Control. Again, Control was probably the only other one I bought. Not day one, I think it was in the second week of release, but I did pay full price for that. But it was another Amazon, you get a third off the sticker price anyway from buying it from them. Plague Tale Innocence was a Cash Converters find as well. That one was a bit cheaper. That was only, again, in the $30 range. Resident Evil 2, I waited until I got the PS4 version. I got that one first, played through the first campaign, the Leon story. I lent that out to a friend who has a PS4. He only has a PS4 and a Switch, so I lent him that version so he could play through it. But as most friends are, they're sort of being slack about playing it. It's like, bro, if I lend you a game, knock it out fast, mate. Like, knock the shit out of it really quick. So that one was only, I think, like $25 or something on Amazon. The Xbox versions of a lot of games are ridiculously cheap on Amazon, especially towards the end of their print run, and especially compared to the PS4 and Switch version. You're paying a premium a lot of times to get a less graphically impressive version, although Xbox One will often have not all the data on a disc, so those are times when I would definitely jump over to PS4. But Xbox One, Resident Evil 2, no-brainer. Get it, it's cheaper, it runs at a higher frame rate resolution, get that. Bloodstained, I got that second week, and I got that from JB Hi-Fi, so that also had about a third off it. That was only about $65 to buy that, and the Xbox One version sold the least, even though I think graphically it is the most impressive. Hellblade I ended up getting off eBay, because Microsoft themselves are selling it on eBay for $22, and it's like, I'll double dip on that, no problems for that price. Now, Ghostbusters was an interesting one because I did have to pay full price for that. That being said, full price for this was $50 because it's a re-release, so it was a lot cheaper than a brand new game. And I tried to get on Amazon, they were sold out. Every version, Switch, PS4, Xbox One, didn't matter, all sold out. Tried to get it through like eBay. The eBay prices were sky high. They were $80, $90. And most of those were the UK versions, which are going to take, 6 to 8 weeks to get here anyway. Excuse me. And then I had to go to EB Games, and I had to get it posted out to me because they only had them in their East Coast warehouse. They didn't have anything in WA. Not secondhand, not new, nothing. So either this game sold really, really well and no one noticed, or they did a very small print run, and that small print run couldn't satisfy demand. And let's be honest, if they want to make money, they're probably going to do a second rerun, like a second reprint on that. So yeah, even though I was a little financially tighter this year because I had to buy a house, I bought most of this stuff secondhand. Only 4 or 5 games in here I would have paid full price for. And some of these things I kickstarted years ago. So yeah, have a look at these games of the year. These are definitely ones you want to go out and grab if you can. Everyone have a really good year. I hope you play a lot of really fun games. And I'll see you again next year. I'll see if I can do another one of these. But yeah, peace out for everyone.